Hi, my name is Emily Hargrove. I'm 38 years old. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and until about 14 months ago, I was sending $4,100 every single month to my family. Not because I was asked nicely, not because it was a loan, not because anyone ever said thank you. I did it because after my dad died, I told myself that's what good daughters do. I need you to sit with that number for a second. $4,100 every month. For 9 years, that's $442,800, nearly $500,000, gone. To people who, at my mother's birthday dinner 2 years ago, told the table that I, quote, hadn't really done much for this family. I didn't say a word that night. I just nodded, cut my chicken, and drove home alone. But I want you to understand that dinner was the beginning of the end. And by the end, I mean the end of the version of me that kept her mouth shut and kept sending money, and kept hoping that someday, somehow, they would see me. They never did. And honestly, if you've ever been the financially responsible one in a family that treats responsibility like it's invisible, you already know exactly where this story is going. Let me give you the background, because context matters here. My dad passed when I was 22. He was a good man, quiet, hardworking, but he left almost nothing behind financially. My mom had never worked a full-time job. My older brother Marcus was 30 at the time and had been drifting between jobs for years. My younger sister Dana was 19 and had just started community college. I was the one who had gotten out. I had a degree in accounting, an entry-level job at a firm in Columbus, and roughly $400 in savings. Within 3 months of my dad's funeral, my mom called me crying. She couldn't make the mortgage. She didn't know what to do. She kept saying, "Your father handled everything. I don't know how to do any of this." So I started helping. A few hundred here, a car payment there. Then it became a regular thing. Then Marcus needed help because he'd lost yet another job. Then Dana needed tuition because her financial aid had a gap. And one day I looked up and I was 30 years old, earning good money as a senior accountant. And I had set up a standing bank transfer, $4,100, first of every month, straight to my mother's account. She distributed it, to herself, to Marcus, to Dana, to whatever emergency had come up that month. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself when Marcus gets stable, when Dana finishes school, when Mom gets on her feet, it would stop. It never stopped. Here's what I need you to understand about my family dynamic, because this is the part that people who haven't lived it sometimes struggle to believe. I was never thanked. Not warmly. Not consistently. Not in a way that felt like they understood what I was giving up. I didn't take vacations for 6 years. I drove a 2009 Honda Civic with 140,000 miles on it until the transmission died. I ate at my desk most days. I declined every wedding invitation from college friends that required travel. I watched my entire 20s disappear into spreadsheets and sacrifice, while my brother called me annually to say I was lucky I had a cushy office job. My sister once posted a photo on Instagram of herself at a resort in Cancun, a trip my money partially funded through Mom's account, and captioned it, "Finally living my best life." She didn't tag me. She didn't call me. She didn't even text. My mom's standard line whenever I tried to gently raise concerns about the money was, "Family takes care of family, Emily. That's just how it is." And I believed her for years. I genuinely did. The birthday dinner I mentioned, that was the pivot. It was my mother's 65th. Marcus had organized it, at a restaurant I'd never been to, in a group text I was added to 2 days before. When I got there, Marcus had already given a speech about how he'd been Mom's rock, how he'd handled everything since Dad passed, how he was so proud of the family they'd built together. Not one mention of me. When my aunt asked if I'd helped with the dinner, my mother said, without hesitating, "Emily lives her own separate life. She hasn't really done much for the family, but that's okay. She's always been independent." My aunt nodded sympathetically. Dana scrolled her phone. Marcus topped off his wine. I sat there and thought, they actually believe this. They have completely rewritten history. In their version of the last 9 years, I don't exist as the person who kept the lights on. I'm just the one who left. I drove home, opened my banking app, and stared at the transfer screen for a very long time. I didn't cancel the transfer that night. I did something more careful. I called my friend Renee, who is a paralegal, and I asked her a question I'd never asked anyone before. If I told my family I had a serious financial crisis, nothing criminal, just bad luck, what would actually happen? Renee was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You'd find out who they really are." I canceled the transfer the following morning. And then I called my mother and told her that I was in financial trouble, that I'd made a bad investment, that I might be filing for bankruptcy, that I couldn't send money anymore, possibly for a long time, and I was so sorry. There was a silence on the phone. Then my mother said, and I am not exaggerating, "What do you mean you can't send it? What are we supposed to do? Not are you okay? Not what happened? Not we love you, we'll figure it out together. What are we supposed to do?" What came next happened fast. Marcus called me within 2 hours to tell me I had betrayed the family, that I had always been selfish, that I had been hoarding money while they struggled. He was furious in a way that told me everything, because a person who truly believed I'd been sending $4,000 a month for 9 years doesn't call that person selfish for stopping. He had convinced himself the money was charity, a small gesture, something I barely noticed. Dana texted me 3 words. "This is real?" I didn't answer. My mother called me every day for 2 weeks. First crying, then angry, then cold. She told me she had expected this from me. She told me I had my father's selfishness. She told me that she had given me everything. I listened to every voicemail. I saved every single one. And then after 6 months, I called a family meeting. I drove back to my hometown, sat down at my mother's kitchen table, with Marcus and Dana both present, and I put a printed bank statement in front of each of them. 9 years of transfers. Every single month itemized. The room went very quiet. I watched Marcus read it twice. I watched Dana's face go white. I watched my mother's hands start to shake. And I said calmly, "I never went bankrupt. I just needed to see who you were without the money." I want to be honest about the ending here, because this isn't a movie. There was no tearful apology. There was no dramatic reunion. Marcus told me I had manipulated them and left. Dana cried and said she hadn't known it was that much, which I almost believed, and then asked if I could help her with one more thing, and I said no, and she stopped calling. My mother said I had humiliated her in her own home. I hugged her. I told her I loved her, and I told her that I couldn't keep giving from a place where giving felt like drowning. I have not reinstated the transfer. 3 relationships ended that day, permanently as far as I can tell, and sitting in my car in her driveway afterward I cried, but not because I regretted it. I cried because I realized how long I had been waiting for someone in that house to ask me if I was okay. The silence told me everything. If you're the one in your family who always picks up the slack, who transfers, who sacrifices, who shows up and stays quiet, I want you to hear this. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Giving shouldn't require you to disappear. And sometimes the only way to know your real value to someone is to stop being useful for a while. I'm Emily Hargrove. I'm 38. And for the first time in 9 years, I'm saving money for myself. If that makes me selfish, then I'm learning to be okay with that.